Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to our audience, wherever you guys are. I am joined by Rupali, Saiya at Zoomifier today. And for some of our first time audience, we usually start with our guest background and then we talk about what they're doing with their organization, what their challenges are. And then for today, we've got a special topic, which is how to get meeting with prospects. And this will be a special segment that Rupali is going to talk about and help us understand some of the aspects that are definitely central to what they do. And essentially, we'll wrap up the discussion after that as we discuss some of the metrics and where Zoomifier sees themselves in the next 6 to 12 months. So, welcome to the show and tell us about your role and what you guys are doing at Zoomifier.
Yeah. Well, hey everyone. My name is Rupali Saiya, and it's great to be on this podcast, Ayan. So, I am a head of sales here at Zoomifier, and Zoomifier is a video rich sales enablement and sales engagement platform. And so, we work with customers across the B2B space, and we're really solving a very critical problem in sales. It's how do you stand out in today's noise and competitive environment? How do you effectively engage your prospects? How do you navigate, the complex B2B sales cycles, especially in what's a constantly changing sales environment? And one of the things that we've been seeing is most salespeople typically go out with text heavy sales content. Sometimes they even struggle to find like the most up to date content that relates to what the customer needs or, is not even like the right brand. And sometimes they don't even have any insight into how the prospect is engaging. And so at Zoomifier, we help with a lot of that. So we help sales reps shorten sales cycles, win more deals by equipping them with the tools to create more video rich content, the tools to be able to tailor and personalize the content, and then also track real-time engagement insights into, how the prospect is engaging with that content. Are they really interested? Are they not? And then how do you do this at scale? And so we've seen customers who use Zoomifier actually see 3 times more engagement with their prospects by using these tools and these methods. And so really passionate about all things sales and excited to dive into more of our conversation today around that as well.
Beautiful. No, thanks for the introduction. Obviously, as the head of sales, right? Tell us a little bit about your role and how you fit into the big picture at Zoomifier.
Yeah. So, a little bit about my background. I started off as a computer science engineer, worked in the software industry as an engineer. But then I actually transitioned into a sales role at Workday, which was the previous company I was with. And they had a phenomenal sales training program. So I was someone who had never had any sales experience. I went through this amazing 1 year program where we really learned how to tailor the conversation, the demo, the presentation to the prospect, right? What matters most to them? How do you communicate the value? And it was really drilled into me. How do you always communicate value to customers? And that's something that, I had this amazing program to go through, but not every salesperson gets that opportunity. And so I'm really passionate about how do I now deliver the tools to helping every salesperson better communicate their offering, sell value, and stand out. Because in today's day and age, you can't just talk features, features, and features.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As somebody once said, sales is about solutions,
Yep.
and it's how well you're able to solve a problem that translates into that. So I'm pretty sure that's what you're seeing on a day-to-day basis, right?
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, it's all about solution-based selling, value-based selling, and really just building that relationship and understanding your prospect.
For sure. So that being said, what does a typical day look like for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I start off my day by thinking about my customers, right? Who am I going to be talking to today or later this week? Who am I trying to target? And really kind of understanding and diving into the heads of those people. So, at Zoomifier, while any B2B customer can be a customer of Zoomifier, we do have specific industries that we focus on. And so one of the things I do is really try to get inside the heads of people in those industries. And, a few of those verticals are sports, media and entertainment, insurance, real estate. And one of the things that makes these industries really unique is that they all require deep personalization and trust building at every single touch point with their customer. And so a lot of my day to day is really understanding, what do the people in those industries live every day, talking to my customers, talking to people in those industries. And then, of course, understanding how I can communicate the value of Zoomifier to those folks as well, but also understanding the problems and challenges our customers are having when it comes to sales and seeing how we can collaborate and think outside of the box to help drive their deals forward as well.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that the personalization really adds an aspect of trust building right from the get go when it comes to presenting those solutions to all these niches, which you guys are very strategically working with.
Hmm.
So for sure, you said you guys do sports and entertainment, hospitality, and insurance and real estate. Are those like your top industries that you guys work with, or are there others as well?
Yeah, yeah. So those are definitely some of our top ones. In addition to those, higher education on the admission sales side is another one that we work well with. And what's really interesting is the use cases across all of these industries vary quite a bit. But at the end of the day, it's all about value based selling. So on the sports side and media and entertainment, it's sponsorship sales and ad sales. So selling to big brands and and really telling the story of that sports team or telling the story of the demographic they reach out to. On the insurance side, it's navigating that complex hierarchy from an insurance carrier to a brokerage to the end client. And how do you make sure the value is communicated across all of those different touch points? In real estate, there's both the real estate brokerages, there's the developers, there's investors, and each of those have different focuses on their audience that they're communicating to, how they want to communicate some really intense stats about a property, the location, the investment in it. But how do you also make it emotional? How do you make it come to life? And that's something that we really focus on.
Beautiful. What major shifts are you seeing in the industry right now?
Yeah, a common shift that we're seeing across all of these industries, and I think across every B2B organization, is that it's getting harder and harder to meet your number as a salesperson. And it's getting harder to stand out. It's harder to get meetings. And it's also harder to keep the attention of a prospect. And the root cause of a lot of this is we've been seeing the buyer behavior is shifting. People in general are reluctant to just say yes to anything, to say yes to a meeting. It's a bigger risk for them to say yes to a new product and a new investment. It's also a time where people are flooded with information, right? People are constantly distracted on one side with, notifications and our phones right by our, side at all times. But also buyers prefer to do their own research and come to their decision on their own. And so buyers are actually usually coming to the table only when they know they're ready to make some type of decision. So I believe it was like over 80% of the sales process is actually happening before a seller even engages with the buyer because the buyer is already looking up information on their own. They're flooded with, constant content. They're hearing what other people are doing, and they only want to talk to a seller when they kind of know exactly what it is that they want. And so gone are the days where people are just entertaining conversations just because. There's a huge push to be more efficient and deliver more results in every aspect.
Got it. So definitely with so much research going in from a buyer's perspective and all the data points that are available to your average consumer today, there's definitely a place to put that personalization aspect that can win over that buyer, right? So
Hmm.
I think this kind of takes us perfectly into our, how to get meetings with prospects. So that's our magic topic for the day. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, this topic of how to get meetings with prospects is probably the number one challenge we hear when we, start a discovery call with our customers and are kind of really zooming into, what are your challenges? And of course, everyone's goal is more money, right? Revenue goals. But when we really dig into it, it really comes down to how is the sales team reaching out and spending most of their time. When you think about breaking through to an executive who's getting hundreds of generic emails every week. Actually, there's a stat where I read that decision makers receive about 100 plus sales emails per day. So, when you're a seller trying to reach a VP or a C-level executive, you're competing with dozens and hundreds of other vendors. And that traditional sales tactic of just opening your computer at the beginning of the day and just sending out a bunch of emails and just praying that one of those email blasts will result in a response. Those days are kind of gone, right? Even generic LinkedIn messages or like more robotic cold calls, they just are not working anymore because it's such a noisy environment.
For
And
sure.
decision makers have also kind of built walls around themselves, right? And as they should, because no one wants to be kind of constantly bombarded with generic pitches. Yet, knowing this, what's really amazing is every single organization I go into and I talk to the actual sellers and I see what they're doing, they're still glamorizing the fact that, oh, I reached out to 500 prospects today. I sent 500 prospects this pitch deck today of exactly what we do. But newsflash is that one, those emails are not resulting in anything, right? Less than 1% of cold emails actually result in a meeting booked. So just the crazy number that you have to go through to get even a meeting booked. And a meeting booked does not even mean, an opportunity at that point. You still have to qualify them. And so calling it a successful day after sending 500 cold emails is just not the right metric that should be tracked also. You really need to think more about the outcome versus just the actual activity that's being done. And the other aspect of this is when I was talking to a lot of these reps about their whole process of getting meetings with prospects, I looked at the content that they were also sharing with their with the prospects in those emails, and it was all really generic. At the most, what they would do, which they thought was a lot of personalization, is they'd replace a company name in the email, which is not real personalization because you can just put the flags in there,
Right.
or they just slap a logo on a deck. To them, they thought that was, really good personalization. But at the end of the day, that deck was a text heavy PDF that no one even has time to read with a logo, but the context of it is not focused on, what actually matters to the prospect. And so, you know, as I kind of talk to a lot of these customers, I talk about what if instead of playing the numbers game of 500 prospects and 1,000 prospects in a day, you focus on 20 or 50 and you really deep dive into who they are, what do they care about, what's going on in their business, what's going on in their industry, and how can you actually provide value? Because if you go to them and say, I have something of value to do, now you stand out from the hundreds of others who are just selling and putting out their features and doing things without any context, right? People are craving that connection of this person gets what I'm going through and this person wants to actually help me. And yes, it takes time to put that together for those 20 or 50. But I also think that in today's day and age, we do have a lot of great tools at our disposal to help us with that. Of course, we're in the age of AI, and I think the at the very least, what every seller can do is come up with like a prompt in, whatever LLM of choice that you want to use for this specific company I'm reaching out to. What are the major trends going on in this organization, in this industry? Any major deals, acquisitions, um, you know, things that I should know about that are happening, new leadership. You can have some very specific prompts that you can kind of come up with and put into that LLM. And within minutes, you get a full report, a deep report on what really matters to this audience, right? What is going on in their world? And so now you can craft a message to them that's really focused on what they're going through. And, with AI, I think AI can be a really great tool for research to develop that personalization. I think you have to be careful with when you use AI to create your emails and create your content, because then you kind of cross the line of what's authentic versus what's not.
For sure.
And so one of the second steps then we help our customers with is, okay, taking all of this, now how do you package it together in an easy way to communicate how you're going to deliver this value to your customers? And this is where we've seen the power of video be extremely powerful. We've seen that when you send something to someone via text, they only retain 10% of what they read or what they saw. But when people view something as a video, they actually retain 95% of a message, because a video is connecting with them at a more emotional level, right? It's helping them learn and understand from a multiple senses. Also,
Thanks.
there's a lot of yeah, and there's a lot of psychology that kind of comes around video, but not just sending a generic video. One of the things that customers use our platform for actually is to create personalized videos. So why not take that generic PDF, but put your face on top of it and record your audio and video telling them exactly how you are going to help them with their specific challenges that you might have read about, that you researched. Show them that you care about them, that you know them, that you have value to provide to them. And I think three big things happen. One, you stand out because nobody else is sending them videos. Everyone else is sending just text heavy documents or emails. And so this is something different, unexpected. And the decision maker's brain immediately says, hey, I haven't seen this before. Let me pay attention. But they may not watch the whole video. They might only watch the first 10 seconds, but it's something more than they would have done with just a plain old document. The other aspect is the emotional connection, right? If your face is on it, if you're talking to them, it's a human to human connection, which everyone is craving today. And they see your face, they hear your voice, and it feels like you're talking to them, not at them, because it's no longer something that's a highly produced marketing video. This is something where they're like, okay, this person actually took some time to know me. They care about what I'm going through, and they're saying something that's interesting. I should listen. And it doesn't really feel like a big, faceless corporation at that point. It feels relationship driven,
Right.
right? And lastly, that builds trust. And trust at the end of the day is what really helps with someone saying, yes, you know what, I will give this person some time and I will take a meeting with them. And so those are kind of the three aspects of why video can be so powerful and can really be a great way to stand out, and actually be a very easy way for sellers to say, okay, if I'm focused on these 20 prospects today, and if I'm recording this, 5-minute video for each of them, and actually I wouldn't even do 5 minutes. I would keep it to 1 to 2 minutes. It takes me 2 minutes to record a video. It takes me 5 minutes to do the research on them. Okay, within 10 minutes, I can craft something that's pretty personalized and focused to my actual prospect. Now, the second aspect of this is follow up is very important, and doing follow up that's valuable rather than follow up that's just, hey, checking in to see if you got this. Hey, just following up to see if you got that. But how can you actually keep giving them little nuggets of value that's going to drive them to say, okay, you know what? This person's consistently providing me value. This is really interesting. And I understand enough about what they're trying to sell me or what they're trying to work with me on that I'm now open to taking a meeting, or I'm open to spending my time on this. It does take for any outreach, it takes about 8 touch points to even just get a meeting or get a response. But beyond that, even after your first meeting, it does take about 5 or 6 follow ups before you can really get something moving and going in there in that opportunity. And so a lot of sellers quit after that first follow up, but that's because they're just saying, hey, I'm just checking in and following up. Everyone's just going to, delete that email. But what if you could follow up with another bite-sized piece of content that relates to the challenge that, you read about? Or, what if you ask them a really question that relates to them that they might actually be thinking about, and maybe you give it some thought and come up with some ideas on it, and record another little video talking about that, right? What are things that you can do that think outside of the box,
Uh-huh.
that show that you're almost like a consultative seller rather than just a feature function, um, pusher. Yeah, exactly.
No, I totally resonate with the, you hit multiple senses, your retention is definitely higher than a single sense target. And the personalization definitely adds to that trust building factor, because at the end of the day, right, people buy from people who they can
Hmm.
trust.
Yep.
So, no, I feel like this will definitely resonate with some of our audience that are looking for ways in which they can be more successful in terms of getting that MQL into an SQL and down the funnel into potentially a close. So, thank you so much for sharing this. It's been very enriching.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's the number one thing on everyone's mind, including mine as a seller, and it's easy to just default to the easy thing, which is just sending out cold emails, but it's really when you pause and try to do something a little differently that you really see that, yeah, the things kind of transitioning in the funnel, moving to the next stage. And ultimately, that's when you can really, really build a partnership with your customers as well.
For sure. Are there any, we talked a little bit about enrichment, right? Like, how do you enrich your messaging to be more personal? And the short answer is do your research, look at what's relevant to that company, that prospect, look for tidbits of news or anything else that is, say, in the current affairs space that has potentially impacted their business. Is there any aspect currently or planned in future enhancements of Zoomifier that will make this process easier so that somebody that has to go to, an outside LLM to pull that can essentially upload a list of your 20 people that we were talking about, right? And it digs out more relevant information about them to help make this personalization more efficient.
Yeah, absolutely. So, within Zoomifier, there's a couple aspects to our platform that really help with a seller efficiently and effectively personalizing content and quickly doing it for their clients. So first of all, we do have a concept of like a digital library within Zoomifier where the marketing or sales enablement team can manage all of the content in a single place for a seller. And so, instead of a seller having to go to 5 different places to find their one sheets, their industry research deep dives, case studies, it can all be available in a single, what we call a slide library. So there could just be different slides about this. A user can just go into Zoomifier and say, I want to create a personalized deck for someone in this industry. And Zoomifier will recommend them all of the relevant pieces of content based on what is actually the branded, approved content by the marketing department, the organization. Because the challenge is if you do go on to, ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini, it doesn't have the context of your company's branded messaging, your branded approved way of positioning things. And so, I know a lot of organizations have specific people who spend hours and hours on this. So, how do you make it easy for a salesperson to maybe they do some of that research in those LLMs, but then when they actually want to pull that content together to create that, deck or that uh, video, how can Zoomifier make that process just take seconds? And so by just looking that up, Zoomifier will pull all the relevant content together. And then, sales rep can then go in and if they want to just add a little bit of context here and there, they can easily do that. And then within a couple clicks, they can now just record that video and have that ready to go. So one of the big things that Zoomifier takes away is the amount of time it takes to create a lot of that content, especially for a seller where you don't want to be spending hours in PowerPoint, moving things around, copy pasting, content over, but instead just have it all available at your fingertips and have Zoomifier recommend what you should present to the specific type of client. What we also have is Zoomifier manages all or tracks all the real-time engagement data on different prospects, different companies, and how they're actually engaging with the content that's been shared with them. So a seller could also see, oh, hey, this slide has been shared with other companies in this industry before and has received this amount of engagement. It seems like it's, resonating well. Let me include this, but let me then, modify or personalize it based on some of this other research and information I have. And so, seeing what's worked and being able to reuse that. And that's a big piece because typically, marketing teams and sellers are kind of in the dark of what's actually working versus what's not working, right? Out of your 20-page deck, what are the slides that people actually care about, that people actually spend time on? And how can you kind of then keep tweaking those to be even better and make it easier for the sellers to constantly, grab those and use those?
For sure. This actually takes us into right into what's working well and what's been challenging, whether it's certain slides or
Hmm.
certain information pieces that are getting a lot more clicks, a lot more time that folks are spending, um, you know, reviewing some of that data. Talk to us about what's working well for you guys right now and what's been a challenge.
Yeah. So, when purely talked from just like content perspective, what we've been seeing is, and this is not going to blow anyone's mind, but it's still something that every organization is doing, which should be kind of thought about differently, is people are no longer reading. So, any piece of content, any slide that has a lot of text, people are just glancing over and pressing next, next, next on. However, a slide that has some good visuals, if there's a real like number or stat that you want to push out and you have some interesting way of kind of bringing that to someone's attention, having intentional storytelling through the whole deck where you're intentionally weaving a message through rather than just feature, 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 steady stat. And then making sure that it's easy to understand, easy to view as well. So that's one aspect just from a pure content perspective is how do you just the challenge of redefining the typical deck and making it something that's more visually appealing and engaging. But the second aspect is more around how do you coach your sales team to better engage your prospects, to sell from more of a value-based perspective, to think outside of the box a little bit and be okay with, pausing before they just send out an email. And that's actually where some of the engagement insights can really make a big difference because sellers can now see what's working and what's not working and get that feedback. Because one of the hardest things about being a seller is you do face a lot of rejection in sales. You don't get much feedback on if something worked or worked even a little bit. So one of the things that sellers are in the dark about is something working. Is a prospect even engaged? Do they even care? And what might be happening behind the scenes is a prospect is evaluating them, is reviewing their content, talking to 5 other stakeholders, but the seller has no insight into that. And so how do you coach your sales team with relevant engagement insights? You can coach a seller to understand, what's hitting, what's not hitting, and how to move a deal forward based on what they're seeing with these metrics. And it's actually something really amazing we've seen with some of our customers. Actually, recently, we've been working with a number of college sports properties. And the number one thing that's actually moving their deals forward is now being able to see that someone just even viewed a proposal and not discounting them. We actually had a customer who was able to move a deal forward over the holidays in, I think it was 60 days total from discovery. A college sports property was able to close a deal 60 days from discovery to verbal commit. And it was a 3-year partnership over the holidays just because they were able to see engagement insights and keep that momentum going. So every time they saw engagement, they would follow up with another piece of value and it would keep that momentum going rather than just assuming, well, hey, nothing's happening. They're not responding. They're not interested.
Yeah.
So I'd say like one of the big challenges we see is how do you properly coach your sales team and keep them motivated to see that momentum?
Yeah. That's in terms of the customers that you work with, right? What are the challenges as an organization?
Hmm.
As speaking for Zoomify, right? What do you feel has been a challenge in terms of getting your message out to more of the market and just kind of uh, sharing what you guys have because
Yeah.
you guys have something really good, something very valuable that is kryptonite. So, yeah, I guess what has been challenging with
Yeah.
getting this out?
Yeah, it's one of the challenges that I am constantly thinking about is Zoomifier is applicable for, the sales team, right? Those are the real end users, but it
Uh-huh.
does require a lot of work from the marketing team and the sales enablement team to manage the content, to set it up. And so we do have to get buy-in from at least 2 different parts of an organization. And so we're selling both to the marketing team and the sales team.
Right.
And both have very different priorities, metrics that they focus on. They have different day in the lives. So there is a little bit of a back and forth between sales and marketing too that we have to navigate.
Yeah.
And so it's always thinking about, if we get into an organization from the marketing side, the
Hmm.
conversation does tend to be very creative, design, content focused. When we get into it from the sales side, it's a lot more insights, engagement, selling focused.
Correct.
So navigating how do we move from one to the other in an organization to get buy-in from both sides because sales won't necessarily do what marketing says and marketing won't necessarily always do what sales says.
Yeah, that's the classic two-sided coin, right? Of
Yeah.
RevOps. How do you get the marketing to work well with the sales? They're
Yep.
probably more interested in what the branding looks like and how the look and feel of the first click experience and what that looks like, rather than the delivery of the information and the presentation or the content it's per se.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
What metrics are you most focused on improving?
Yeah. So I think the metrics that I'm most focused on is, I mean, obviously there's the whole revenue side of things, but really digging into that is what are the outcomes of the activities that we're doing. So it's easy, especially for a small company, to just keep busy. But what is the actual outcome of going to a conference? What is the number of opportunities that turns into? How
Uh-huh.
many of those opportunities are actually turning into proper evaluations? Because opportunities do take a while to close, but making sure that, is there a proper pilot that comes out of it? Was there a
Uh-huh.
proper fair evaluation? Did we connect with the right people, or was it just someone lower level at a company that took a call but wasn't necessarily able to then kind of help us navigate up an organization?
Yeah.
Really focusing on outcomes rather than just, hey, everyone's busy doing things.
The next thing I was going to talk to you about is you've covered the industries that you serve at a great extent. What is your ideal customer profile at Zoomify?
Yeah. So our ideal customer, like I said earlier, could be anyone in the B2B landscape, but we do have a specific few industries that we focus on: sports, media and entertainment, insurance, real estate, hospitality, but specifically an organization who is focused and excited and energized to transform how they sell. They have a offering that they need to better explain, they need to better communicate, and they also need help navigating that complex sales cycle. So it has to be someone who is ready to transform what they're doing, not just someone who's like, I want to do things the same way, everything's working. That's great, but then what is the value of Zoomifier? Someone who also really believes in the power of, better engaging a prospect and how that moves a deal forward in a more authentic, personalized way. And that's why we've targeted these industries that focus more on, high touch, high value relationship based selling. Specifically, though, we focus on the heads of sales, head of sales enablement, and head of marketing as the ideal buyers, as those are the people who are really sitting in the seats that see, all of the different aspects I've talked about. And they touch all of these different aspects as well and do own the budget. Ideally, it's the head of sales because they own the most amount of budget. And they do touch more of these aspects of the actual outcome of a lot of this work that's being done.
No, for sure. Okay, so I have more of a holistic question. From consider sales organization, they've got a lead gen pipeline. Where does the journey with Zoomify start for a prospect?
Yeah. So and just to clarify, and when we have a lead or someone, what does that look like?
Kind of. So let's pick real estate, right? Where's the salesperson or the person that's actually creating the content first
Yeah.
start using Zoomify? Is it
Got it.
top of the funnel, middle of the funnel? Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah. Um, yeah. So users of Zoomifier can use Zoomifier across the entire sales funnel. So they can use it, as we talked a lot about today, to get that meeting, to find the relevant content to send out, to create personalized videos and track who's viewing it to then see how to follow up. They can use it. And this is where the bulk of our customers actually use it, is for the actual meetings, to engage the prospects. So, your pitch decks, personalizing it for the client, for
Mm,
the follow-ups after the meeting. We have, a tool called Journeys, which allows you to send one piece of content. And then as they're viewing it, when you're like viewing Netflix or YouTube, it says, here are 3 more videos similar to
sure.
what you viewed. A
Yep.
salesperson can actually create that journey for their client to say, instead of sending, 10 things to them at once while they're already reviewing the deck, let me just say, here's a case study, here's a one sheet, here's a video, and have it right there in kind of in that experience.
Beautiful.
And then it can also be used at the end of the funnel, actually after you close a deal, from retention, or what in sports they call proof of performance. So when you actually need to go back in for renewal and retain your customers, how do you, kind of upsell, share more about what the result of your engagement with them was, and keep that relationship going and delivering value.
Great. No, this has been very educational. Future goals. Let's talk about that a little bit. So where do you envision Zoomify 6 to 12 months from now and even beyond?
Yeah. So 6 to 12 months from now, I envision Zoomifier seeing more results of transforming sales organizations with our existing customers and kind of expanding into a lot of these different verticals. We're a startup, we're a smaller company, but we're starting to become more of a known name in a lot of these industries. And in 6 to 12 months, I'd love to be kind of the known name in each of these verticals that we really focus on. Beyond that, there's a lot that Zoomifier can expand into, from the perspective of different features in our product, leveraging AI in countless ways, and then growing to different industries as well. We have to take a step by step approach to really focus in on a few industries, really understand our customers. But I think over time we could really kind of expand that.
Thank you. As we wrap up the podcast, I have a fun one for you. If you had a magic wand to fix one thing in your business that's holding you back or slowing you down, what would that be?
That's a great question. If I had a magic wand, I would use it to be able to go to as many conferences and events as I could. And the reason I say that is I feel the best way to meet leads is in person, face to face, and it's something that you don't get often anymore. Most meetings are held virtually, and so that human connection does take a while to really develop. But I've found that everyone I've met at conferences, that spark is already there. You had some aside conversation, you have something in common that you can kind of start from talking about, and you have a lot of shared focus because you both attended that conference and that topic was interested. Now, the reason I say that's what I would do with a magic wand is because both time, energy, and money are finite. And in a magical world, I could go to all of these things, have unlimited energy and resources to do that as well. But I've seen the most amount of success with
Uh-huh.
going to conferences, meeting people in person, and then taking those conversations forward from there.
For sure. Yeah, I think there is no substitute to physical presence, even with all the tech that we have in the world, right?
Yeah.
The trust building happens a lot easier with a handshake than it does with the presentation online,
Yep.
separated by or unified by technology, however you look at it.
Yeah.
So, um, no, these insights have been great. So, Rupali, thank you so much for being so open to sharing all the lessons that you've learned, all the things that you guys are doing, and just about your platform in general. I'm pretty sure that there's going to be a few people watching this that are going to find a lot of value and curiosity, and I'll be sharing links to your platform as well when we share this on YouTube. But do you have any closing thoughts, anything that comes to mind before we wrap up?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on here, and really, really happy to share kind of where our brains are thinking around just selling, getting meetings with prospects, and kind of the importance of value based selling. I just say to anyone who's out there listening, if sales is on your mind, just keep at it. It's all about being persistent, focused. Sometimes cutting out the noise and not doing what everyone else is doing can help you stand out, and would welcome the opportunity to work with additional customers, whether it's the verticals I mentioned or others. We're always open.
Well, for sure. Thank you so much for being here and helping us. As we move these series forwards, where we talk to a lot of SaaS founders and SaaS leaders, and appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, thank you so much. Really happy to be on here and looking forward to connecting more with you and hearing the end result of the podcast.
Absolutely.